यशोदानन्दन व्रज जनरञ्जन यशोदानन्दन व्रज जनरञ्जन यमुनतीरावनचारि यमुनतीरावनचारि जय रात माधव बिहारी जय रात माधव कुंज बिहारी जय गोपीचन वल्लभा गिरिवरदारी जय गोपीचन वल्लभा गिरिवरदारी यशोदानन्दन व्रज जनरञ्जन यशोदानन्दन व्रज जनरञ्जन तीरावनचारि यमुनतीरावनचारि जय रात माधव बिहारी हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम राम हरे 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 कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे 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 राम हरे 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 कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे 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 राम हरे 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 कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे 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 राम हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम हरे 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 कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम राम हरे हरे जय प्रभुपदा जय प्रभुपदा जय प्रभुपदा श्रील प्रभुपदा जय ओम विष्णुपाद परमहंस प्रभुपाद सदा श्री श्रीमद स्वयं श्री भक्ति वेदांत स्वामी श्रील प्रभुपाद की जय इस्कॉन संस्थापक श्रील प्रभुपाद की जय जय ओम विष्णुपाद परमहंस प्रभुपाद सदा श्री श्रीमद स्वयं श्री भक्ति सिद्धांत सरस्वती गोस्वामी महाराज प्रभुपाद की जय जय ओम विश्ववास लकुर के श्रोतास्पद महाराज की जय जय ओम विश्ववास सच्चिदानंद शैल भक्ति ठाकुर की जय जय ओम विश्वपाद वैष्णव साहब श्री जगन्नाथ आत्मा महाराज की जय जय श्री रूप सनातन भट्ट रघुनाथ श्री जी गोपाल भट्टदास षट गोस्वामी प्रभु की जय नवाचार्य दास ठाकुर की जय प्रेम से श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री प्रियदास शिव सारि गौरव भक्त की जय श्री श्री राधा कृष्ण गोपिन श्याम कुंड राधा कुंड गिरिवर्धन की जय श्री मायापुर धाम की जय श्री वृंदावन धाम की जय गंगा माई की जय यमुना माई की जय भक्ति देवी की जय कलश देवी की जय अनंत कोटि वैष्णव वृंद की जय श्री हरिनाम संकीर्तन की जय ग्रंथराज श्रीमद् भागवतम की जय इस्कॉन वर्तमान गुरुवंत की जय समावित भक्त की जय गौरव प्रेमानंद हरि हरि बोल ऑल ग्लोरीज टू द असम ऑल ग्लोरीज टू द असम ऑल ग्लोरीज टू द असम ऑल ग्लोरीज टू हिपुर श्री गौरव गौर गौशील प्रभुपाद की जय ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय नारायणं नमस्कृत्य नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वती व्यासं ततो जयमुदीरये नष्टप्रायेषु अपत्रेषु नित्यं भागवत सेवया भगवती उत्तम श्लोके भक्तिर्भवति नैष्टिः. Hare Krishna. Welcome to the Friday morning Srimad Bhagavatam class. Today we are discussing from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 4, Chapter 18, text 23 to 26. And read text first 23-24. Pashavo yavasam kshiram vatsam kritva cha govrisam aranyapatre cha dukshan mrigendrena cha damstrinah kavyada pranina kravyam duduhu sve kalevare suparnavatsa vihagash charam chacharam evacha. Translation Shil Prabhupada ki jai. The four-legged animals like the cows made a calf out of the bull who carries Lord Shiva and made a milking pot out of the forest. Thus they got fresh green grasses to eat. Ferocious animals like tigers transformed a lion into a calf, and thus they were able to get flesh for milk. The birds made a calf out of Garuda and took milk from the planet Earth in the form of moving insects and non-moving plants and grasses. Purport Srila Prabhupada ki jai. There are many carnivorous birds descended from Garuda, the winged carrier of Lord Vishnu. Indeed, there is a particular type of bird that is very fond of eating monkeys. Eagles are fond of eating goats, and of course, many birds eat only fruits and berries. Therefore, the words charam, referring to moving animals, and acharam, referring to grasses, fruits, and vegetables, are mentioned in this verse, text 25. Vatavatsa vanaspatayah pratak rasamayam payah girayo himavatpatsa nana datun swasanushu. Translation Srila Prabhupada ki jai. The trees made a calf out of the banyan tree, and thus they derived milk in the form of many delicious juices. The mountains transformed the Himalayas into a calf, and they milked a variety of minerals into a pot made of the peak of hills. Text 26. Sarve swamukhyavatsena sve sve patra pritapayah sarvakamatukam pritvim duduhu pritu bhavitam. Translation Srila Prabhupada ki jai. The planet Earth supplied everyone his respective food. During the time of King Prithu, the earth was fully under the control of the king. Thus, all the inhabitants of the earth could get their food supply by creating various types of calves and putting their particular types of milk in various pots. This is evidence that the Lord supplies food to everyone. As confirmed the Vedas, Eko Bahunan Yo Vidadati Kaman, although the Lord is one, he is supplying all necessities to everyone through the medium of planet Earth. There are different varieties of living entities on different planets, and they all derive their vegetable eatables from their planets in different forms. On the basis of these descriptions, how can one assume that there is no living entity on the moon? Every moon is earthly, being composed of the 5 elements. Every planet produces different types of food according to the needs of its residents. According to the Vedic Shastras, it is not true that the moon does not produce food or that no living entity is living there. Om Jnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Chakshurmilitam Vena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manopishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupakadamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Udapadakamala Shri Gurun Vaishnavam Shri Rupam Saprijatam Sagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sijimam Satvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sagana Lalita Shri Vishakanvitam हे कृष्णा करुणा सिंधु दीनबंधो जगतपते गोपीशरभूकांत राधाकांत नमोस्तुते तप्त कांचन गौरा राधे वृंदावनेश्वरी वृषभानुस्ते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिय वाञ्छाकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपासिन्धुभ्यश्च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः. जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत शिव सादि गौर भक्तवृंद. हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे. मोहम करो दिवाचल गम लगे दिग्गज पतम श्री गुरुदेव धर्म परमात्मा श्री चैतन्य ईश्वर. Hare Krishna. So in these verses we have seen so far the chapter entitled Prithu Maharaj means the earth planet. So many living entities have been transformed into calves, and then Prithu Maharaj extracts milk in the form of various ingredients. So in today's verses, we see that, particularly in verse 26, there is a mention as to how there are living entities throughout the universe. There are living entities in various planets, also different types of living entities in various planets. And the Lord supplies food for all living entities, irrespective of whatever planet or whatever universes they are in. In our universe, which is supposed to be the smallest one, there are n number of planets, and there are different species of living entities. And the Lord has made arrangements for food for each and every species living entity without any discrepancy. That is the Lord's arrangement. We may sometimes feel shortages of food, or sometimes there may be surpluses. We'll understand from today's listing as to why sometimes food is scarce and why there is abundance. So, in the Katha Upanishad, there is a sloka which Srila Prabhupada always quotes in his classes. The verse goes like this: Nityo Nityanam Chetanas Chetananam Eko Bahunam Yo Vidadati Kaman. The translation is, the Supreme Lord is eternal, and the living beings are also eternal. The Supreme Lord is cognizant, and the living beings are cognizant. The difference is that the Supreme Lord is supplying all the necessities of life for the many other living beings. That means this is a conclusion of the statement that there are many living entities which will come to, but the Lord is supplying the food or basic necessities of life for all the living beings everywhere, not only in this planet Earth, but in all the planets, in all the universes also. So we'll have some understanding what is food and how it is supplied. So in Bhagavad Gita 3:14, the Lord tells Arjuna, Annat pavanti bhutani parjanyat anna sambhavaha yajnat bhavati parjanyo yajna karma samudbhavaha. The translation is, all living beings subsist, all living bodies subsist on food grains which are produced from rains. Rains are produced by performance of yajna, and yajna is born of prescribed duties. So this is one important point that we should take note of. It is not that we want food, food comes automatically. Uh, for good abundant supply of food grain, there must be sufficient rains. And rains are supplied when there is a proper yajna that is performed. So, in this chapter itself, or the one before that, we read as to how Prithu Maharaj, before Prithu Maharaj's reign, King Vena, he stopped all the sacrifices. And thereafter, the shortage of scarcity of food grain started. And then when Prithu Maharaj came, he appealed to Mother Earth, and then she offered, he suggested ways and means. She said that many who are atheistic in nature and many are hoarding grains. So we can understand that hoarding of grains is not permitted. Some businessmen may hold certain amount of grains for their business, but generally, those who are many who hoard the grains and sell it in the black market. So such type of factors can lead to shortage of food. Otherwise, the Lord is supplying food, is not only food, essential necessities to all the species of living entities. But human beings are supposed to perform yajna. When yajna is properly done, then the rains are produced, and from the good rains come sufficient food grains. So this is one reason why there may be scarcity of food grains. Then in the first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, there is a mention where it says that in Kali Yuga, the duration of life is shortened not so much because of insufficient food, but because of irregular habits. By keeping regular habits and eating simple food, any man can maintain his health. Overeating, over sense gratification, over dependence on another's mercy, and artificial standards of living sap the very validity of human energy. Therefore, the duration of life is shortened. So the point is that we see that today there are many places where people are living a very short life, duration of life. These days, we see people dying even in their 20s and early 30s and so forth. It is not because there is a scarcity of food, but people have adopted to wrong eating the wrong food and also uh, indulging in other nonsensical habits. For example, in this paper, there's a mention about overeating. People tend to overeat more than what they can. Then there's a mention about over sense gratification. This is one reason why there is a scarcity of food and there is a shortage of lifespan. The more one indulges in sense gratification, the more one's duration of life is reduced. Then over dependence on another's mercy and artificial standards of living. These are four factors mentioned. We see that today artificial standards of living are there. People eat very late, 10 o'clock, 7 o'clock in the night, 12 o'clock in the night, get up very late. These are all not healthy habits. And these types of artificial, because they watch TV and so forth until late in the night, these things reduce the duration of life, irregular habits, not due to shortage of food. Then there is another quote in the first canto itself, which says, under the administration of a representative king, the kingdom is full of opulence. At that time, human beings need not eat animals. There are ample food grains, milk, fruit, and vegetables, so that the human beings as well as the animals can eat sumptuously and to their heart's content. If all the living beings are satisfied with food and shelter and obey the prescribed rules, there cannot be any disturbance between one living being and another. Parikshit Maharaj was a worthy king, and therefore all were happy during his reign. This is an example how during Parikshit Maharaj's rule, there was no scarcity of anything. All the people got their food full because the king was a devotee of the Lord. The kingdom was full of opulence, and nobody had any reason to kill other animals because as long as food grains, milk, and where fruits and vegetables are available in plenty, there is no need to kill other animals. This is one reason why, when the representative of the kingdom is a devotee of the Lord, then automatically everything is available in plenty. And there is one more quote in first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, which says in Kali Yuga, the last millennium of a round of 4 millenniums, the power of all material objects deteriorates by the influence of time. In this age, the duration of the material body of the people in general is very much reduced, and so is the memory. The action of matter has also not so much incentive. The land does not produce food grains in the same proportion as it did in other ages. The cow does not give as much milk as it used to give formerly. The production of vegetables and fruits is less than before. As such, all living beings, both men and animals, do not have sumptuous nourishing food. Due to want of so many necessities of life, naturally the duration of life is reduced, the memory is short, intelligence is meager, mutual dealings are full of hypocrisy, and so forth. So, one thing is that people have lost their memory due to uh, unhealthy habits of eating, sleeping, and etc. And the cow also does not give as much milk as it used to give before because the cows are not taken care of or they are not protected. The Srimad Bhagavatam mentions about few things which are to be protected. One is cows, second is Brahmanas, and the third thing is Brahmanical culture. As much as these three are protected, the kingdom will be prosperous. But we see that neither the cows are protected, nor the Brahminical culture is protected, nor the Brahmanas are protected. And the Brahmanas are also not behaving like Brahmanas. This is one reason why lifespan is short. Then in the first canto itself, there's another quote which says that according to Manu, the great author of civic codes and religious principles, even the killer of an animal is to be considered a murderer because animal food is never meant for the civilized man, whose prime duty is to prepare himself for going back to Godhead. He says that in the act of killing an animal, there is a regular conspiracy by the party of sinners, and all of them are liable to be punished as murderers, exactly like a party of conspirators who kill a human being combinedly. He who gives permission he who kills the animal, he who sells the slaughtered animal, he who cooks the animal, he who administers distribution of the foodstuff, and at last he who eats such cooked animal food are all murderers, and all of them are liable to be punished by the laws of nature. So this purport conclusion is that human being is meant to subsist on food, grains, milk, and etc. And they cannot resort to abnormal killing of animals for sense gratification. So there are different types of people who are involved in the reactions, and these few are mentioned here. One who kills the animal, one who sells the slaughtered animal, one who cooks the animal, one who administers distribution of food, and at last one who eats such cooked food. They are all murderers, and all of them are liable to be punished by the laws of nature. So during Srila Prabhupada's time, he clearly went, when he traveled all over the globe, he clearly mentioned that one of the reasons why there are so much of war and famine and these things, drought, etc., because people have resorted to uh, irregular killing or unorganized killing of animals for sense gratification, and which ultimately results in war and so forth. Because the moment you kill somebody, they have to kill the person who is killing the next life. Jivo Jivas, this is the law of nature. The moment you kill somebody, in the next birth, that living being kills you. And this is one reason for irregularities that are observed in the world today. Another important point that is mentioned in the first canto itself says that before the age of Kali, that Brahmanas, cows, the women, the children, and old men were given protection. The protection of cows maintains the most miraculous form of food, that is milk, for maintaining the finer tissues of the brain, for understanding higher aims of life. So human life is meant for understanding the higher purpose of life, that is for going back to Godhead. Now that requires a lot of spiritual intelligence. And in the Shastras, it is mentioned that by drinking cow's milk, it gives room for development of the finer brain tissues by which one can understand the spiritual knowledge properly. So cow milk is very essential, and if the cows are sent to the slaughterhouses, there cannot be any peace of life. There is also another quote which says that the Shudras must first of all be satisfied by sumptuous food and clothing before any sacrifice is performed. In this age, so many functions are held by spending millions, but the poor laborer is not sufficiently fed or given charity, clothing, etc. The laborers are thus dissatisfied, and so they make agitation. This point refers to the mishandling of the Shudras, where they are supposed to be given sufficient food, shelter, and clothing. And if the laborers are if the Shudras are dissatisfied, then there is always an agitation in the form of a strike and so forth, which we see today. Then in the first canto itself, there is a quote as to how during Maharaj Yudhishthira's time, everything was in abundance. It said the necessities of human society are food, grains, fruits, milk, minerals, clothing, wood, etc. So one requires all these items to fulfill the material needs of the body. Certainly, one does not require flesh and fish or iron rods and machinery. During the regime of Maharaj Yudhishthira, all over the world there were regulated rainfalls. Rainfalls are not in the control of the human being. The heavenly king Indradeva is the controller of rains, and he is the servant of the Lord. So when the Lord is obeyed by the king and the people under the king's administration, then there are regulated rains from the horizon, and these rains are the causes of all varieties of production on the land. Not only do regulated rains help ample production of grains and fruits, but when they combine with astronomical influences, there is ample production of valuable stones and pearls. Grains and vegetables can sufficiently feed a man and animals, and a fatty cow delivers enough milk to supply a man sumptuously with vigor and vitality. If there is enough milk, enough grains, enough fat, enough cotton, enough silk, and enough jewels, why do people need cinemas, houses of prostitution, slaughterhouses, etc.? What is the need of an artificial, luxurious life of cinema, cars, radio, flesh, and hotels. So this purport is a direct conclusion that when there is a king who is a devotee of the Lord, and when he has civilization who are also devotees of the Lord, then automatically the demigods become pleased. And in this example, during Mahadev Yudhishthira's time, he was a great devotee of the Lord. The citizens are also were devotees of the Lord. So Indradeva became happy with them, and he provided sufficient rains which could produce not only food items like grains and milk, etc., but also the rains produce sufficient pearls and gems, etc. During the yester years, there was no paper currency. There was no plastic currency like people have credit card, debit card, etc. these days. There were only pearls and gems. And these days, it is not possible to see these because it is Kali Yuga. So in Kali Yuga, everything has become plastic and paper. That is a currency which has no value today. But pearls and gems were long lasting. They had a lot of value during the previous ages. Then there is another example that is given in the first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, the chapter entitled Krishna Enters Dwaraka. So when Krishna entered Dwaraka, a perfect arrangement was made by decorating the roads and streets very well, and by welcoming the Lord with sufficient ingredients like incense, lamps, flowers, sweets, fruits, and other ingredients. All these were offered to the Lord, and the remnants of the food offered to the Lord were distributed among the gathering citizens. So it was not like a dry reception of modern days. Each and every house was ready to receive the Lord in a similar way, and thus each and every house on the roads and street distributed such remnants of food to the citizens, and therefore the festival was successful. Without distribution of food, no function is complete, and that is the way of Vedic culture. From this, we can understand that during the Vedic culture, any festival was celebrated with this abundant supply of food that was offered to the Lord. It was not like nowadays, if any festival is celebrated, mostly people celebrate with video cameras to show their photograph in Instagram, Facebook, etc. But those days there was no Facebook, there was no Instagram, nothing. And people used to visit their respective friends and relatives' homes and exchange a lot of foodstuffs, which is not prevailing today. There is also a quote in the first canto itself which says that what is a real hunger? The whole material world is full of hungry living beings. The hunger is not for good food, shelter, or sense gratification. The hunger is for the spiritual atmosphere. Due to ignorance only, they think that the world is dissatisfied because there is not sufficient food, shelter, and defense and objects of sense gratification. This is illusion. When the living being is hungry for spiritual satisfaction, he is misrepresented by material hunger. But the foolish leaders cannot see that even the people who are most sumptuously materially satisfied are still hungry. And what is their hunger and poverty? This hunger is actually for spiritual food, spiritual shelter, spiritual defense, and spiritual sense gratification. And these can be obtained the association of the Supreme Spirit, Lord Shri Krishna. And therefore, one who has them cannot be attracted by the so-called food, shelter, defense, and sense gratification of the material world, even if they are relished by the denizens of the heavenly planets. Therefore, in Bhagavad Gita 8:16, it is stated that by the Lord, that even in the topmost planet of the universe, namely the Brahma Loka, where the duration of life is multiplied by millions of years by Earth calculation, one cannot satisfy his hunger. Such hunger can be satisfied only when the living being is situated in immortality, which is attained in the spiritual sky far, far above the Brahma Loka, in association of Lord Mukunda. That means this purport gives a conclusion that even if mankind is provided sufficient food to fulfill his hunger, still he will never be happy because the real hunger is spiritual hunger. Even if materially somebody is opulent, but if he's not uh, in the spiritual path, he will always feel hunger, and that will be exhibited in the form of material hunger, but actually the hunger is spiritual hunger. This is a very important point. Another important quote in the 13th chapter, the first canto, I read the sloka, but it's an important sloka that Srila Prabhupada always quotes. Ahastani sahasthanam apadani chatuspadam falguni tatra mahatam jivo jivasya jivanam. The translation says that those who are devoid of hands are prey for those who have hands. Those devoid of legs are prey for the four-legged, and the weak are the sustenance of the strong, and the general rule holds that one living being is food for another. So this important verse, Jivo Jivasya Jivana, means that one living being is food for another. And how this is explained in this translation itself, that those who have hands, for them the food is from those who are devoid of hands. Those who have four-legged, their food is those who don't have legs. And then the weak are the sustenance for the strong, and the general rule is that one living being is food for another. So you see, nature has made arrangements for food for all the living entities, whether it's a cow, the form of a grass, or whether it's a tiger in the form of another animal. The law of nature has made arrangements for each and every living entity to get their food. So it is not that there is a shortage of food, but the weaker ones are the food for the stronger ones. This is a law of nature. So Maharaj Yudhishthira was advised by Narada Muni not to worry about his uncle's, that is Dhritarashtra's suffering for want of food, etc., because they could live on vegetables even in jungles as prasada of the Supreme Lord, and thus explore the path of salvation. So as you all are aware that when after all the sons of Dhritarashtra were killed, Dhritarashtra was still staying in the house of the Pandavas. And that is the time Vidura came in and gave some strong advices. And here we see that Narada Muni advised Maharaja Yudhishthira, because when Vidura and Dhritarashtra left in the night without informing anybody to the forest for self-realization or for giving up the respective body by the practice of yoga, Yudhishthira Maharaj got up in the morning and he saw that none of them were there. That is the time Narad Muni came and Maharaja's Yudhishthira's palace, and he said that don't worry about your uncle for want of sufficient food. They can live on vegetables in the jungles as prasada of the Supreme Lord. That means one should honor only prasada. This is one reason there is a scarcity of food today, because people are eating for sense gratification. Uh, so, in the first canto itself, there is an example given about Dhruva Muni's pastime regarding food. I'll narrate this pastime, you might have heard about it. Dhruva Muni had about 10,000 disciples, and wherever he visited, he was a guest of the Kshatriya kings. So he used to be always accompanied by all these followers. And one day he came, Duryodhana inspired Dhruva Muni to go to the house of the Pandavas when they were in exile, knowing that they cannot take care of him. But it so happened when Dhruva Muni came along with the disciples, uh, they came, and then that is the time the Draupadi had already taken her dinner. They had what is called the Akshaya Patra, which you all know of. And after that day's meal is honored by the Pandavas, there cannot be any more further food left. Until then, that Akshaya Patra could give any amount of food that was required. So Dhruva Muni and his followers came to the Yudhishthira Maharaj's cottage, and they said that they have come there for having honoring prasadam. But then they said that they will go to the river and all of them will take their bath and come back. So at that time, Draupadi was wondering as to how she can provide food for so many of them when they have already finished their food and there was nothing left in the Akshaya Patra. So they were all the great devotees of the Lord, and the Lord gives an assurance that He always protects the devotees of the Lord. So when they were wondering like this, Krishna came in, and at that time, Krishna said that he wants to have food. And Draupadi said that they just finished their honoring their food. But Krishna asked for the Akshay Patra, and there was one grain that was left in the Akshay Patra. Krishna took that and uh, he ate it. And as soon as he honored that, he was feeling full. And when he was feeling full, automatically it so happened that Durvasa Muni and his followers who had gone to take bath in the river, their stomach was also full. So they, instead of coming back to Yudhishthira's cottage with so many followers, Durvasa Muni and the followers, they left straight away without visiting their cottage. So they said, so this proves that the Lord is the greatest mystic and he's a great Yogeshwara. That's why he's known as Yogeshwara. Not only that, the Lord protected the Pandavas in this time of crisis also. Because if the Lord is satisfied, then everyone will be satisfied. That is one lesson that we've learned from the Durvasa Muni's pastime. Another important quote that is given is that about life in moon. In the first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, it is mentioned that on the moon, the inhabitants are fit for greater sense enjoyment by drinking somarasa, and the Pitraloka is obtained by good charitable work. So there are various programs for sense gratification, either during this life or in the life after death. Some are trying to reach the moon or other planets by some mechanical arrangement because they are anxious to get into such planets without doing good work, but it is not to happen. By the law of the nature or the law of supreme, different places are meant for different grades of living beings according to the work they have performed. By good work only, one can obtain birth in a good family, opulence, good education, and good bodily features. So this particular purport goes well with the purport in the last sloka, that is 26, which mentions that there are living entities in all the planets, in all the universes, and there are various species of life in all the planets, and the Lord has made arrangements for sufficient quantity of supply of food to all these living entities in all the planets, in all the universes. So this is what, but there is a higher level of sense gratification available in the upper planets like moon, heavenly planets, Brahmaloka, etc. And by doing some good work, one can get birth in those planets also based on their desire and how much they deserve. So point is that there are living entities and food is provided by the Lord to all these living entities. Then before I conclude the class, there is a quote in the 15th chapter of first canto, which says that one can reach the heavenly planets by the pious acts recommended in the Shastras in the category of fruitive activity. As stated in Bhagavad Gita, when the reactions of such pious are spent, the enjoyer is again degraded to this earthly planet. The moon is on the level of with the heavenly planets, and only persons who have performed virtues, only performing sacrifices, giving charity, and undergoing severe austerities, can be allowed to enter into the heavenly planets in the same body simply by the grace of the Lord. Otherwise, it is not possible to do so. So the point here is that uh, one cannot go to heavenly planets by artificial means. One can go to these heavenly planets only by performing charitable work or by performing pious activities. Failure, uh, in the absence of these activities, it is not possible to reach the heavenly planets, which are also temporary in nature. So even if somebody goes to the heavenly planets, as soon as the results of one's activities are exhausted, they have to come back to this material world or earthly planet and take birth and again enter the cycle of birth and death. So one should not be under the illusion that he will go to heavenly planets with higher sense gratification. Particularly, there is a mention that in the moon planet, there is a special beverage called Somarasa, which extends the lifespan of every living being. But and those who drink the Somarasa, their lifespan is extended. But the point is that irrespective of whether one drinks Somarasa or does not drink Somarasa, life in all these planets are uh, fixed. There is life is not eternal. So there are living entities in sun, there are living entities in moon, living entities in Venus, Saturn. All these planets, there are different living entities, and the Lord has provided sufficient arrangement for food in all these places. In fact, if we see Bhagavad Gita itself, the Lord says that He recited Bhagavad Gita to sun god Vivaswan. That means the sun god is also a person, and he is in charge of the sun planet. Similarly, uh, moon god is there who is in charge of the moon planet. So if there is a presiding deity, which we call as Surya Bhagavan, then there must be living entities also. Otherwise, there is no need for the presiding deity there. So there are living entities in the sun also, which is very hot. But the food, or in fact, the living entities in that planet is much different from what we see in our earthly planet, because the living entities there have to be bearing a very extraordinary amount of heat. Then only they can sustain in the sun planet. On the other hand, if we see moon is a planet which gives a cooling shade. In fact, it is said that the moon gives a lot of nourishment to the vegetables and fruits which are grown in the earth, which is also true scientifically. So if moon does not give the moonlight, the nourishment that we get from our fruits and vegetables will not be there. So there are living entities in the moon also, and people want to go there for drinking somarasa, but that is not the right way. People have to perform pious activities and then reach the moonly planet. So the conclusion is that there are living entities in all the planets in all the universes, and the Lord has made sufficient arrangements for different types of food that are required. Even in on our own earthly planet, we see that human beings have different types of food requirement. The aquatics, like fish and other species, have a different type of a food requirement. Those living entities, the forests have a different types of food requirement. But the Lord has made arrangement naturally for every living entity to get their sufficient food requirement. But the point is that the human form of life is meant for a higher purpose, that is attain spiritual realization. So that spiritual hunger, if it is not satisfied, no amount of food for material provided materially will satisfy a living being. So with this, I conclude the class for the day. If anybody has got any questions, any comments, I can take such questions. So if no